Tonight, you're stepping into a world that's anything but gentle. No castles, no chivalry, and definitely no glittering banquets. You're diving headfirst into a place where a hard loaf of bread isn't the worst thing on your plate. It might be baked with dried blood and wheat bran, and you'll be eating it shoulder to shoulder with a guy casually flicking lice off his leg like he's seasoning his stew. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where daily life was less noble epic and more grimy survival. Tonight you'll explore 3 things you take for granted every day: eating, sleeping, and staying clean, and discover just how strange, uncomfortable, and downright revolting they could be. If you enjoy wandering through history's weirdest corners, drop a comment. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these tales travel. Now take a deep breath, listen for the crackle of the imaginary hearth, and let's begin. Your medieval meals are less about culinary delight and more about dodging death, appeasing spirits, and embracing the absurd. Breakfast isn't a cheerful bowl of cereal or a trendy smoothie. It's a tankard of small beer and a raw onion so pungent it could wake the dead. This weak, barely alcoholic brew is your default drink, whether you're a grizzled farmer or a toddling child, because water from the local well is more likely to send you sprinting to the outhouse than quench your thirst. Wells are often contaminated with everything from animal waste to mysterious sludge, so you rely on small beer to stay hydrated without gambling on dysentery. It's not about getting tipsy, it's about surviving until lunch. Even kids as young as 3 sip it, and if you raise an eyebrow, the response is simple. Better a slightly buzzed kid than a dehydrated one. Your staple is everything stew, a bubbling cauldron of chaos that simmers for days, sometimes weeks on the hearth. This isn't your grandma's chicken noodle soup. It's a murky blend of whatever scraps, bones, and half-rotten vegetables you can scrounge up. Leftover turnips? Toss 'em in. A squirrel that didn't make it across the yard? Into the pot. Some stews sit so long they develop a faint, eerie glow from bioluminescent bacteria, which you, ever the optimist, dub holy soup and swear is blessed by saints. The local healer, who doubles as the village's questionable medical expert, might recommend adding dried horse manure to the mix to ward off chills or cure a vague ailment. You don't argue, partly because the healer is the only one with a book, and partly because medieval life doesn't leave room for second opinions. You scoop the stew into a wooden bowl, eat with your fingers or a shared spoon, and if you find a twig or a stray feather, you just flick it aside and keep going. Bread is the backbone of your diet, but it's not the crusty, artisanal sourdough you know today. Your loaves are dense, gritty, and baked with whatever grains or non-grains you have on hand. Think barley, rye, or if you're truly desperate, ground up acorns or dried blood mixed with bran. When your bread goes stale, which happens the moment it cools, it often sprouts a fuzzy black mold. Instead of tossing it, you see this as a feature, not a flaw. You scrape off the worst of it, toast the loaf over a fire, sprinkle it with ash for seasoning, and call it a day. It's the medieval equivalent of a protein bar, portable, durable, and vaguely threatening. Some religious orders take it further, fermenting dough with urine to achieve spiritual purity. Yes, urine bread is a real thing, and you eat it with the grim determination usually reserved for tax season. Monks swear it brings them closer to God. You might argue it brings you closer to a stomachache. Dessert is no less bizarre. Forget chocolate truffles or creamy tiramisu. Your sweets are a test of courage. Grilled cartilage scraped from the bones of last week's feast is a chewy delicacy. Jellied brains, served cold and wobbling like a grim prophecy, are a nobleman's treat. And then there's worm pie, a crusty pastry stuffed with ground-up dried insects, touted as a protein-packed secret weapon. Bugs aren't a last resort, they're a staple, especially in lean times when a handful of crickets is more reliable than a harvest. If you're fancy, you might get ice cream, soured milk churned with honey, no refrigeration needed because it's already halfway to yogurt. The texture is grainy, the smell is questionable, and the aftertaste lingers like regret. If you're lucky, you might snag a handful of dried fruit, but only if your lord hasn't hoarded it all for his winter stash. The way you eat is just as shocking as what you eat. Table manners? A myth. You spit bones directly onto the floor, where the family dog or a stray chicken plays clean-up crew. You, whether lord, peasant, or sticky-fingered child, dip your hands into a communal sauce bowl, a greasy slurry of fat and herbs that sits in the center of the table. Clean hands are for cowards. The grimiest fingers prove you're all in. If you show up with freshly washed hands, you might as well announce you're too weak to handle the meal's chaos. In noble households, dining can turn into a theatrical production. Picture your host, to ward off evil spirits, smashing a live chicken's head on the table before carving the roast. It's less about flavour and more about flexing spiritual authority. In some villages, coming-of-age rituals are even wilder. You prove your mettle by eating raw animal intestines in front of the entire community, gulping down slimy coils while elders nod approvingly. Nothing screams, "I'm ready for adulthood," like a belly full of guts and a crowd chanting your name. Your medieval bedtime is a saga of its own, full of quirks that make your 3 o'clock IM Netflix binge look downright sensible. You practice segmented sleep, a 2-part cycle that carves the night into chunks like a poorly cut pie. After sundown, you crawl into bed for the first sleep, a 4-hour nap that kicks off the night. Then, around midnight, you wake up for the watch, a 1 to 2 hour interlude of medieval multitasking. This isn't insomnia, it's the plan. During the watch, you pray, read religious texts by candlelight, or check on your livestock, because nothing disrupts a good dream like worrying your goat has wandered into the neighbour's field. It's also, curiously, prime time for intimacy. Medieval physicians claim your body is well rested and calm of mind at this hour, which is a polite way of saying you're too groggy to argue. The second sleep follows, carrying you to dawn. This rhythm is universal. Monks, farmers, even poets like Chaucer follow it, casually dropping references to it in their work, proving that sleep struggles are a literary trope even then. Your bed is less about comfort and more about not freezing to death. If you're a peasant, your bed is a straw pallet, hay stuffed into a coarse sack, if you're lucky enough to have one. No sack? You sleep on loose straw, often damp, frequently claimed by the family cat or a rogue mouse. These pallets are cheap, insulate against the cold, and double as a buffet for lice and fleas. If you itch, you ignore it. If something bites you, you shift slightly and pray it isn't a rat. If you're wealthier, you might elevate your pallet onto a wooden frame, which doesn't make it comfier, but slightly reduces the odds of waking up with a beetle in your ear. If you're a noble, you have the good stuff. A massive wooden bed with a feather mattress, embroidered linens and a canopy to block drafts and bugs. These beds are so valuable they're passed down in wills. Forget inheriting the family farm, you get Aunt Mildred's suspiciously lumpy mattress complete with its own ecosystem. You pile in with your whole family, parents, kids, maybe a grandparent or a stray cousin, because personal space is as mythical as a unicorn, and pyjamas are just your day clothes, now slightly sweatier. Your nightcap isn't a cozy drink but a literal hat, designed to keep your head from turning into an icicle in drafty homes. Stone walls, thatched roofs, and windows made of oiled parchment or thin animal horn are about as insulating as a paper towel. Body heat escapes fastest through your scalp, so nightcaps, often wool or linen, sometimes absurdly pointy like a wizard's hat, are a necessity. If you're a woman, they double as modesty covers, especially if you're married, as you're expected to keep your hair hidden even in bed, because apparently God is watching your scalp at 2 o'clock IM. A fancy nightcap, dyed or embroidered, is a status symbol. Nothing says, "I've made it," like sporting a miniature tapestry on your head while you snore. In towns, answering the door in one is a polite medieval way of saying, "I'm not here for your nonsense," paired with long, loose nightshirts. Think Ebenezer Scrooge, minus the ghostly life lessons. They're practical, scratchy, and occasionally a fire hazard near open hearths. At inns, privacy is a fever dream. You don't get a room, you get a spot in a bed already occupied by strangers who might snore, stink, or have a concerning number of boils. Inns are human bunkhouses, with beds hosting 2, 3, or even 4 people, depending on how much everyone is willing to tolerate. In bigger cities, you end up in dormitory-style halls, rows of beds packed like sardines with zero personal space. Snoring is a free-for-all, elbow space is a battleground, and some inns try to organise beds by trade. Blacksmiths with blacksmiths, clergy with clergy, thieves with thieves, allegedly. More often, it's first come, first sprawled. To avoid theft, you sleep with your purse tied to your belt or tucked under your clothes. Others use their bags as pillows, doubling as a lumpy headrest and a crude alarm system. If someone grabs your stuff, you wake up poorer, but at least alert. If you're a noble, you dodge this nightmare, traveling with an entourage or demanding a private room, because nothing says privilege like not sharing your bed with a guy who smells like old cheese. Your bedtime prayers aren't about zen, they're about prepping for the very real chance you might not wake up. Illness, fire, bandits, or just hitting 30 in 1247 could end you, so you'd better get your soul in order. Prayers are like medieval antivirus software. Recite them, and maybe you'll dodge eternal torment. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Isn't a lullaby, it's a grim contract with the afterlife. You teach your kids to pray too, partly for salvation, partly to keep them from whining about the dog hogging the straw. If you're a monk, you cap your day with Compline, a final prayer before a vow of silence, because chatting after dark is a sin, and you're already wiped out from dodging demons and hunger pangs. You might pray to specific saints like celestial bouncers guarding your soul from the devil's VIP list. Angels are watching, you tell your kids, which sounds sweet until you realize it's less guardian angel and more divine security camera. Your dreams aren't random nonsense, they're serious business, potentially divine or demonic. A dream of fire might mean hell is calling. Water could signal purification or drowning. A goat-headed man juggling fish? Straight to the priest, do not pass go. Entire books are written to decode your dreams, and actions in them could reveal real-world sins. Steal a loaf in your sleep? Better confess your gluttony. Just in case, if you're a monk or nun, you log your dreams, hoping for holy visions, though some are told to cut back on the onions. The church is wary. Not all dreams are from God, and some are devilish traps to corrupt your soul. An unwholesome dream might mean spiritual attack, or maybe you just slept too close to the chimney's fumes. Your dreams also fuel medieval literature, packed with knights meeting angels or cryptic beasts spouting poetry. It's the Netflix of the era, minus the happy endings. Animals in your bed aren't pets, they're living space heaters. In your peasant home, pigs, dogs and chickens share your straw pile, their body heat a godsend in freezing winters. A dog keeps your toes from frostbite. A cow in the corner is a walking furnace. Hygiene? Let's not go there. Animals roam freely, and a hoof to the face at 3:00 a.m. is just part of the package. If you're a noble, you might keep lapdogs for fashion, not warmth, but even your beds are flea motels. Castles sometimes have separate quarters for prized pets, because nothing says power like a dog with a title and its own room. Animals are loud, don't respect boundaries, and occasionally leave gifts in the straw. But you roll with it. Survival trumps comfort. If you're a monk, your dormitory is where comfort goes to die under a vow of silence. You sleep in rows on wooden planks, maybe with a thin straw mattress if the abbot is feeling generous. You sleep in your full robe, belt and sandals, changing for 2:00 a.m. prayers is too much effort. No pillows, no curtains, no talking. Silence is enforced, and a loud groan could earn you a week scrubbing chamber pots. Snoring is a grey area, but your cellmates might glare like you've betrayed the Lord. Lighting is a single candle, if that, you don't need to see. Just lie still and avoid sinning. Sleep isn't rest, it's spiritual training, prepping your soul for eternity by denying your body any joy. Some monks sleep sitting up, propped against a wall to dodge any hint of luxury or dreams. Compared to this, your peasant straw pile and snoring pig feel like a 5-star resort. At 2:00 IAM, if you're a monk, you drag yourself to matins, the first prayer of the day, held in the pitch-black chill of a stone chapel. Lit by flickering candles, you chant psalms, fighting hunger, cold, and the urge to nod off. Dozing is a sin, punished with extra chores or leading the next service. Matins can last an hour, sometimes 2 for zealous orders, while your stomach growls from last night's lentil gruel. Afterward, you might return to bed for a second sleep. Stricter monasteries send you straight to work. Threshing wheat on 4 hours of rest is peak holiness. Why so early? It's about sacrificing comfort to honour God in the quietest, most miserable part of the night, free from daylight's temptations. Numb feet, smoky air, and Brother Cedric's off-key chanting are just bonuses. Sleeping alone is sketchy, it wastes heat and leaves you open to demonic possession, since the devil apparently works overtime after dark. You cram in with your family, even if you're married, piling in with kids, servants, or random guests. In monasteries, solitary sleep is a punishment. Group sleeping keeps you accountable. A private bed raises eyebrows, neighbours might whisper you're up to no good. Medieval logic, crowds scare off Satan, solitude invites him in. You might sleep sitting up, propped by bolsters or angled bed frames, because lying flat is too corpse-like. Doctors warn it could clog your lungs or disrupt your humours, a catch-all for anything from indigestion to existential dread. If you're a noble, your bed is designed to keep you semi-upright, perfect for digesting heavy meals or fending off surprise demon attacks. Monks take it further, dozing on benches or leaning against walls, hoods pulled tight against the cold. It's not about health, it's about proving you can suffer better than the next guy. Your bed is a pest paradise. Straw mattresses and shed blankets host fleas, lice and bedbugs like a medieval Airbnb for parasites. Even nobles employ nitpickers to comb critters from their hair. Imagine master of the royal scalp on your resume. You burn herbs like wormwood, sleep with garlic clumps, or sprinkle ashes to repel bugs, which does little but ensures no one gets too romantic. Fleas are so common they're practically family, inspiring poems that are equal parts moralizing and weirdly flirty. Nothing says medieval love like bonding over shared parasites. If you're a knight, you rarely sleep in full armour, too heavy, too loud, but in war zones you keep mail shirts or breastplates on, your sword at your side like a lethal stuffed animal. Rolling over sounds like a blacksmith shop collapsing, but it beats dying in a midnight raid. If you're a merchant or guard, you wear gamsons, quilted jackets that offer light protection and slightly less misery than chainmail. In sieges, your shield doubles as a pillow, because nothing says ready for battle like napping on your own defense system. Sleepwalking isn't just a quirky habit, it's a full-blown horror show that can turn a quiet night into a village-widely panic. If you're caught wandering the dark, muttering nonsense, or worse, chanting Latin you don't actually know, people don't think sleep disorder, they think possession or witchcraft. Imagine stumbling onto the roof in your nightshirt, eyes glassy, mumbling about goats and demons, only to wake up to a crowd of neighbours clutching pitchforks and calling for an exorcism before the morning bread is baked. Some blame bad humours, like an excess of black bile, which is the medieval catch-all for anything from a bad mood to a cursed soul. Others believe your soul is joyriding, leaving your body to lurch around like a drunken mule, knocking over chamber pots or startling the livestock. You try preventative measures as practical as they are unhinged, herbal teas brewed with questionable roots, fervent prayers to tether your spirit, or, most charmingly, tying your ankle to a chair to keep you from wandering into trouble. It's extreme, but so is life in a world of open hearths, stray knives, and floors that double as animal pens. In rural areas, you hang iron charms above your bed to anchor your soul, because nothing says sweet dreams like a lump of metal dangling over your face. If you stumble into a church while sleepwalking, it's a coin toss. Either you're touched by divine grace, or the priest is already heating the holy water for a cleansing ritual. Some villages even keep records of notorious sleepwalkers, branding you as a potential heretic, or, at the very least, someone to avoid at the communal well. Your nighttime is a cacophony of chaos, a relentless assault on the senses that you somehow sleep through thanks to sheer exhaustion. Church bells clang at unholy hours, 2:00 a.m. for matins, 4:00 a.m. for lauds, marking the sacred rhythm of the day with all the subtlety of a blacksmith's hammer. These aren't gentle chimes, they're booming calls to prayer that echo through villages, rattling windows and startling cows. Thunderstorms add their own drama, shaking leaky thatched roofs and sending drafts through parchment-thin windows. Yet you doze on, because ploughing fields or dodging bandits doesn't pause for insomnia. Squealing pigs, barking dogs, and the occasional distant scream of a siege or skirmish are just the era's white noise, as familiar as the drone of a modern air conditioner. During the Black Death, when death carts rumble through streets collecting bodies, you might sleep through the grim parade, your snores drowning out the creak of wheels and the wails of mourners. If you don't wake up, neighbours might whisper it's a mercy, better to slip away in sleep than face another day of plague and panic. Sleep deprivation is your lifestyle, hardwired into a body worn down by dawn-to-dusk labour, meagre meals of gruel and grit, and the constant hustle to avoid taxes, starvation, or eternal damnation. You work until you drop, eat just enough to stagger on, and crash hard. no matter if the world outside sounds like the apocalypse is holding auditions. Sleep isn't just rest, it's your escape hatch, a temporary reprieve from a world that seems hell-bent on breaking you. Famine leaves your belly hollow, plague claims your neighbours by the dozen, and apocalyptic prophecies churned out every few decades by wild-eyed preachers keep you on edge, convinced the end is nigh. In those moments, you curl up under a threadbare cloak, whisper a half-remembered prayer, and nap to forget the chaos. There's a brutal wisdom in that. When life serves up hunger, disease, or the looming threat of Viking raids, sleep is the one place you can hide, even if just for a few hours. Villages buzz with tales of people who slept through disasters, floods, fires, even minor rebellions, because exhaustion doesn't negotiate. Monks write of sleep as a little death, a chance to rehearse for eternity, but for you, a peasant, it's simpler. A way to hit the snooze button on a reality that feels like a divine prank. You might even believe sleeping deeply can ward off evil spirits, as if a good snore is a spiritual force field. It's not about comfort, it's about survival, a fleeting chance to dream of a world where your crops don't fail, and the tax collector gets lost on the way to your hut. Your hygiene, or the utter lack thereof, is where medieval life plunges into nightmare fuel so vile it could make a modern germaphobe weep. Baths are a rare luxury, reserved for the wealthy or the occasional religious festival, where dunking in a river counts as both cleansing and penance. Some secret societies take it to a bizarre extreme, sharing bath water as a brotherly ritual, believing it forges spiritual bonds or banishes lurking demons. Picture climbing into a tub of murky, lukewarm water, knowing it has already soaked your neighbour's calloused feet and possibly their livestock. It's not just gross, it's holy. Or so they claim. Your perfume is no better. Forget lavender mists or rosewater spritzes. Your scent is a grim concoction of boiled pig intestines, mixed with crushed herbs and smeared on your skin to mask the village's pervasive stench of rotting garbage, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present whiff of death carts rolling by. It's not exactly a fragrance you'd bottle, but when the air smells like despair and decay, you slap on some gut paste and call it a win. If you're a noble, you might add a sprig of rosemary to your mix, as if that makes it less like smearing entrails on your neck. Lice scratching isn't a private embarrassment, it's a communal sport, as social as a modern coffee shop chat. Your mornings often kick off with a lice-picking hour, where you gather around the hearth or in the square, scratching furiously while swapping gossip about who stole whose chicken or which monk was caught napping during Vespers. Some take it to a surreal level, naming their lice-like prized pets, Sir Itchington or Lady Crawl, and trading them as bizarre status symbols, as if a particularly robust louse is a badge of honour. Imagine flicking a fat flea onto your rival's sleeve during a heated debate about grain taxes, then boasting about it at the next village feast. Your toilet is another horror, a wooden chair with a hole and a bucket underneath, often parked right in your bedroom for convenience. No one is spared, not even nobles, one of whom, legend has it, took a groggy midnight tumble into his own chamber pot, emerging less lordly and more fragrant than he'd hoped. Privacy is a myth, and so is sanitation. You empty the bucket when you remember, which isn't often enough. Laundry is a pipe dream for you. Your clothes are worn until they disintegrate, and washing them is a rare event, often involving dubious methods. Some believe ashes from cremated sinners, gathered after ritual burnings for heretics or criminals, can be mixed with water to wash away sins and stains alike. You scrub this grim slurry into your tunics, leaving them questionably clean and undeniably creepy. Your body odour is tackled with equal creativity. You stuff raw onions in your armpits, convinced the eye-watering stench will scare off demons, tax collectors, and maybe even the plague. It doesn't work, but it ensures no one stands too close during market day. Actual soap is a luxury, crafted from pig brains, wood ash and rancid oil, typically reserved for post-slaughter clean-up when your hands are caked in blood and worse. It works, sort of, but leaves your skin smelling like a butcher's scrap pile and your soul questioning every decision that led you to this moment. If you're a woman, your hygiene is a chapter of horrors all its own. Your sanitary pads are coarse burlap scraps, tied with leather straps and reused indefinitely. Washing them? Too much effort. Instead, you hang them on rooftops to purify in the sun, because medieval logic holds that sunlight is holy and can cleanse anything, even blood-soaked rags. The sight of fluttering burlap on a village skyline is as normal as laundry lines today, though far less appetizing. Some religious sects skip baths entirely, opting to wipe down with rags dipped in watered-down wine, believing it purifies both body and soul. Why bother with a tub when you have holy booze and a prayer? It's less about cleanliness and more about signaling your piety to the neighbors, who are probably too busy scratching their own lice to care. Your lice infestations call for solutions as desperate as they are deranged. One popular trick involves waving a small torch over your scalp to scare the lice into fleeing, paired with loud psalm chanting to give the ritual extra spiritual oomph. The risk of setting your hair on fire is high, but so is everything else. Plague, bandits, a cow kicking you in your sleep. You might swear by rubbing garlic paste into your scalp, which doesn't evict the lice, but makes you smell like a walking stew pot. Others sprinkle crushed herbs like tansy or wormwood into their hair, hoping the bitter scent will send the critters packing. It rarely works, but it gives you something to do besides curse your itchy existence. Hygiene isn't about feeling fresh or smelling nice, it's about surviving another day without the village priest declaring you a walking curse, or the local healer prescribing a bath in boiled nettles. So there you are, sleepwalking through a world of demons and pitchforks, dozing to the tune of squealing pigs and apocalyptic bells, and scratching lice like it's a sacred rite. If you think modern life is a grind, be thankful you're not dodging stray hooves in your sleep or washing your face with pig-brain soap. Share your thoughts. Which of these medieval habits makes you want to douse yourself in hand sanitizer? Stay curious, stay clean, and maybe mutter a quick prayer for your soul tonight, just in case. The Salem Witch Trials, 1692. In the winter of 1692, you find yourself in Salem, Massachusetts, a village shrouded in a gloom that eclipses the snow blanketing its fields. A creeping dread born of suspicion and superstition weaves its way through your timbered home, chilling your heart with a ferocity that rivals the icy winds howling across the frozen marshes. As a Puritan, you're forged in unyielding faith, devout, disciplined, and perpetually vigilant for signs of divine favor or demonic betrayal. You envision a holy city rising from the wilderness, a radiant testament to God's covenant, yet you live in constant fear that Satan lurks in every shadow, plotting to unravel your sacred mission. Your life is a relentless crucible. Salem has splintered from Salem town in bitter disputes over religion, land, and governance, leaving festering wounds among your community. Barren harvests mock your toil, smallpox scars neighboring towns, and the trauma of recent wars with native tribes lingers, etched in blood-soaked memories. Petty feuds over boundaries and inheritances simmer, while distrust of outsiders, or anyone who dares stray from the Puritan mold, gnaws at your village's core. Beneath the iron grip of a New England winter, Salem is a tinderbox, trembling for a spark to ignite your latent fears. That spark flares in the home of Reverend Samuel Parris, your stern and divisive minister. His 9-year-old daughter, Betty, and 11-year-old niece, Abigail Williams, begin to unravel in ways that defy your comprehension. Their screams shatter your quiet nights. Objects fly from their hands in frantic convulsions, and their bodies twist into unnatural shapes that seem to mock the divine order. At times they fall into eerie trances, their eyes wide with a terror no child should bear. Whispers of curses spread like frost across your village. The girls speak of invisible tormentors, spectral hands that pinch, unseen teeth that bite. Paris, gripped by fear and desperation, summons Dr. William Griggs, your local physician. After exhausting all natural explanations, Griggs delivers a diagnosis that plunges you into an abyss. That single word is a torch hurled into your world, heavy with dread. To you, a Puritan, witches are not mere folk tales, but real agents of Satan, capable of shattering your covenant with God. If the devil can infiltrate your minister's own hearth, what hope remains for you? Pressed by anxious adults and curious peers, Betty and Abigail begin naming their tormentors. Their first accusations target your village's outcasts, those already shunned by a community quick to judge, but the net soon widens, ensnaring the respectable, the prosperous, even the devout. From your quiet hamlet, Salem's name will soon echo through history, its buried fears erupting into cries from the gallows. carving a wound of paranoia into the soul of a fledgling nation. Once the spectre of witchcraft takes hold, it spreads like a plague, silent at first, then consuming all you touch. The afflicted girls, Betty, Abigail, and soon others like Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Mary Walcott, and Elizabeth Hubbard, grow bolder with each passing day. Their convulsions in church, their shrieks during prayers, and their visions of dark spirits hovering over your neighbours transform them into oracles of doom. This is no childish prank. It's a grim theatre, public and potent, believed with a fervour that silences your doubt. The first accused are those least able to defend themselves, women who live on the margins of your tightly knit society. Sarah Good, a beggar whose muttered complaints at slammed doors you brand as curses, is an easy mark. Her pipe-smoking and sharp tongue make her your archetype of a witch, a woman who defies your ideal of meekness. Sarah Osborne, a widow who scandalized you by marrying her indentured servant and challenging inheritance norms, is another branded by her defiance. And Tituba, an enslaved woman from Barbados in Paris's household, is the most alien to you. Her unfamiliar accent, tales of exotic lore, and outsider status unnerve you. Under intense pressure, perhaps even physical coercion, Tituba confesses to witchcraft, spinning a vivid tale of a tall man in black, a devilish figure who demands she sign his book. She speaks of yellow birds, red cats, spectral dogs, and, most damningly, claims other witches roam your village. Her confession, meant to quell your panic, instead fans it into a wildfire. Tituba's words are a key turned in a lock, unleashing a torrent of accusations. Names multiply weekly, each one a fresh tear in your village's fabric. You turn on your neighbours, old grudges cloaked in the garb of divine justice. A cow's sudden death, a child's fever, a spoiled harvest, all are proof of sorcery to you. Fear becomes a contagion, more virulent than smallpox, stifling those who might question your madness. To defend an accused witch is to invite suspicion. Silence is your only refuge. And so, the web of accusations grows, entangling you in a snare of your own making. Reason is trampled, and hysteria ascends the throne. As your village spirals into chaos, the colonial government intervenes, seeking to contain the inferno. Governor William Phips, newly appointed and eager to assert control, establishes a special tribunal in June 1692, the Court of Oyer and Termina, meaning to hear and determine. But this is no bastion of justice, it's a forge, where your fear is hammered into verdicts. The court's rules buckle under panic, embracing a perilous innovation: spectral evidence. This allows testimony of ghostly attacks, visions of an accused spirit tormenting you in dreams or trances, to stand as proof. Such claims are untouchable, for how can you refute a phantom? The afflicted girls, elevated to star witnesses, turn the courtroom into a stage of horrors. Mary Walcott's shrieks greet each accused, her fits timed with eerie precision. Ann Putnam Jr. claims to see spirits of the accused hovering like vultures. Judges like Samuel Sewell, John Hathorne, and Chief Justice William Staunton, men of learning and faith, swallow these tales whole, their skepticism drowned in the tide of your belief. There are no defense attorneys, no shield against the elite system. Onslaught. When you deny the charges, you provoke the girl's writhing agony. When you confess, you buy a chance at life, but only by naming others. The system rewards deceit and crushes truth. The trials become a public spectacle, drawing crowds from neighbouring towns to witness the accused, shackled, bewildered, often destitute, paraded like trophies of your holy war. Yet not all are blind to the madness. In quiet corners you hear whispers that the girl's fits are feigned, that accusations follow patterns of envy, greed, or revenge. But to speak openly is to court ruin, in a village where questioning the court is tantamount to defying God. Your reason retreats, and the law becomes a warped mirror, reflecting not justice, but your deepest fears. On June 10, 1692, the gallows claims its first victim, Bridget Bishop, a woman whose tavern and bright red clothing have long made her a target of your gossip. Neighbours swear her spirit pinched them in the night, that her glance withered infants, that she kept enchanted dolls. She denies every charge, but the rope silences her. The executions accelerate, each one tightening the noose around your soul. On July 19, 5 women, Sarah Good, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, and Sarah Wilds, meet their deaths. Rebecca Nurse, a 71-year-old pillar of your church, stuns you. Her jury's initial not guilty verdict is overturned under pressure from the court and the girl's theatrics. "I am as innocent as the child unborn," she murmurs, but the gallows heed no pleas. August brings more deaths, and, on September 22, the darkest day, 8 souls swing in a single morning. Among them is Martha Corey, who dared question the trial's legitimacy. Her husband, Giles Corey, refuses to enter a plea, defying the court's authority. In response, they subject him to peine forte à Dieu, an ancient punishment, stones piled upon his chest, crushing him over 3 agonizing days. His final words, defiant and haunting, are, "More weight." By the time the hysteria wanes, 19 have been hanged, 1 pressed to death, and at least 5 perish in jail. Over 200 stand accused, their lives shattered by your village that has turned on itself. The gallows cast a shadow that darkens every hearth, and justice, once your beacon, is led blindfolded to the scaffold. While the executions draw your gaze, hundreds languish in jails, cramped, fetid, and reeking of despair. Your small Salem prison cannot hold them all. Accused witches are chained in cells in Ipswich, Boston, and beyond, left to starve, freeze, and waste away. Many are no sorcerers, but ordinary folk, your neighbours, friends, parents, children, caught in the crossfire of petty disputes or envied for their land. Mary Esty, sister of Rebecca Nurse, is a mother of 7, known for her piety. Released once, she is rearrested after fresh accusations. Her plea to halt the bloodshed ignored. She hangs soon after, her words a futile cry against your tide. Dorothy Good, Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter, is interrogated and, under duress, confesses to witchcraft. Her childish babble is taken as truth, and she spends 8 months in chains, emerging a broken shell, her mind never healing. Elizabeth Proctor, pregnant and condemned, is spared only because her unborn child delays her execution. She gives birth in a cell, her life preserved by a twist of fate when the trials collapse. Your accusations snowball, each one feeding the next. Some confess in desperation, hoping to escape the noose, only to be pressed to name others, perpetuating the cycle. Entire families are ensnared, fathers, wives, daughters, no one beyond your reach. Your jails groan under the weight of the accused, food is scarce, and disease creeps through the damp stone walls. Some die awaiting trial, lost in a limbo of your paranoia and neglect. Yet still, new names are added, week after week, as if you seek to purge your village by devouring your own. It no longer matters who you are, only who is willing to speak your name. Your jails are a microcosm of your unravelling. Families are torn apart, their livelihoods destroyed as fields lie fallow and homes are seized. You, the accused, face not only the terror of trial, but the grinding misery of confinement. Chains bite into your wrists, vermin scurry across floors, and the stench of unwashed bodies mingles with the damp chill of stone walls. Children, like Dorothy Good, barely old enough to understand the charges, are treated as criminals, their innocence no defence against your zeal. Elderly women, like Rebecca Nurse, once revered, are reduced to shivering shadows, their dignity stripped by the weight of irons and the scorn of their jailers. Men like John Proctor, a prosperous farmer who denounced your trials as fraud, face the indignity of confinement alongside their families, their voices silenced by the court's relentless march. Your jails are not merely holding pens, they are crucibles of suffering, where you, the accused, are broken long before you face the gallows. By the fall of 1692, your fever begins to break, not from a triumph of reason, but from the sheer weight of its excesses. Your accusations grow too bold, striking at the untouchable. Reverend George Burroughs, a former Salem minister, is branded the witch's mastermind. Educated at Harvard and eloquent, he clashed with powerful families, making him your target. On the gallows, he recites the Lord's Prayer flawlessly, a feat witches are thought incapable of, stunning you into silence. Some of you weep, others waver, but the rope still claims him. That moment plants a seed of doubt, a crack in the edifice of your fear. Then comes the accusation of Mary Phipps, wife of Governor William Phipps. Your hysteria has climbed too high, touching the colony's elite. Phipps, battered by criticism and the chaos engulfing his rule, acts decisively. In October 1692, he dissolves the court of Oyer and Termina, halting all executions and trials. Your public sentiment shifts, the spell weakening. Increase Mather, a towering theologian, denounces spectral evidence with radical clarity. It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person be condemned. In your village that spent months believing the opposite, his words are a thunderclap. Your tide turns. Your accusers falter, their performances losing their grip on your imagination. Confessions dry up. Some recant, and others slip quietly from view. Those who shouted accusations now avert their eyes as if to erase their complicity. You, the public, crave stability. Your officials seek to salvage their tarnished authority, and your village, bruised and bloodied, begins to awaken from its nightmare. By late 1692, the judicial machinery that propelled your witch trials into a frenzy of fear and condemnation begins to implode under the weight of its own absurdity. Your court of Oyer and Termina, once a relentless engine of persecution, becomes a symbol of unchecked zeal. Its reliance on spectral evidence and the theatrical accusations of the afflicted girls exposing its fatal flaws. Your tide of public sentiment, which once fueled the hysteria, starts to shift as the trial's excesses grow too glaring to ignore. Accusations that once seemed divinely inspired now appear suspect, tinged with motives of revenge, envy, or desperation. Your colony's elite, including its clergy and magistrates, face mounting pressure to restore order and salvage Massachusetts' tarnished reputation. In October 1692, Governor Phipps, battered by criticism and alarmed by the chaos engulfing his administration, dissolves the disgraced court, halting its proceedings and signaling the end of your trial's most fevered phase. In early 1693, a new tribunal, the Superior Court of Judicature, is established to replace the defunct court and address your remaining cases. This court operates under a markedly different ethos, reflecting your growing skepticism about the validity of the witch hunt. Spectral evidence, the cornerstone of your earlier trials, is explicitly barred, a decision influenced by prominent theologians like Increase Mather, who warned that such evidence was unreliable and dangerous. Your judges, including some who served on the prior court, now approach claims with a caution absent in the earlier frenzy, demanding tangible proof rather than accepting the afflicted girl's convulsions as divine testimony. The shift in judicial standards is dramatic. Of the 56 cases tried by the new court, the vast majority end in acquittals, a stark contrast to the near-certain convictions of the previous year. You, the defendant, who once faced almost inevitable doom, now find room to challenge your accusers, as the court's insistence on concrete evidence dismantles the flimsy foundations of many cases. The collapse of your trial's credibility extends beyond the courtroom. Those who confessed to witchcraft under duress, often to escape the gallows, begin to retract their statements, revealing the lies and coercion that sustained your hysteria. These recantations paint a grim picture of the pressures you faced. Some were beaten, others starved or terrorized into admitting to fantastical crimes, while many named others to satisfy interrogators eager for more culprits. The confessions, once treated as ironclad proof of a vast satanic conspiracy, are now seen as products of fear and manipulation, further eroding your trial's legitimacy. The afflicted girls, who once held you in thrall with their shrieks and visions, see their influence wane. Their performances, once deemed prophetic, now appear rehearsed or exaggerated, failing to sway your judges or spectators as they once did. Figures like Ann Putnam Jr., Mary Walcott, and Abigail Williams, who were elevated to the status of oracles, find their accusations dismissed, as your faith in their claims evaporates. Their theatrics, which once filled courtrooms with dread, now flicker like a spent ember, unable to reignite the fervor that consumed you. The case of Reverend Samuel Willard, a respected Boston minister, briefly suspected of witchcraft, crystallizes your trial's descent into absurdity. Willard, a Harvard-educated cleric known for his moderate views, was never formally charged, but his mere implication, likely spurred by personal or doctrinal rivalries, underscores how far your accusation process strayed from justice. That a man of his stature could be targeted exposes the reckless abandon with which you flung names into the cauldron of suspicion. Willard's brush with accusation, though fleeting, becomes a rallying point for critics who argue that your trials have become a weapon for settling scores, rather than a tool for rooting out evil. His survival, unscathed but shaken, highlights the fragility of reputation in your community, gripped by paranoia and the urgent need for reform. As your judicial system recalibrates, your court moves cautiously, wary of repeating the mistakes of its predecessor. You, the prisoner, who languished in fetid jails across Massachusetts, are released in waves, your freedom a testament to the trial's unraveling. The first to be freed are those against whom evidence was scant or non-existent, often the elderly, the destitute, or those whose only crime was association with the accused. Later, even those who confessed are released, as their admissions are deemed unreliable, coerced under the threat of death or prolonged suffering. Your releases are not without complication. Many of your families face crippling jail fees to secure your freedom, a final indignity after months of imprisonment, loss of property, and social ostracism. Your jails, once overflowing with the accused, begin to empty, their stone walls no longer echoing with the despair of those chained within. Your families of the executed, who watched helplessly as their loved ones were hanged or crushed, emerge from the shadows of fear to demand justice. Your voices, once silenced by your collective panic, now rise in defiance, seeking not only retribution but restoration. John Proctor's children, whose father was a vocal critic of your trials before his execution, petition your colonial government for the return of their family's seized property, arguing that their father's conviction was a miscarriage of justice. Proctor, a prosperous farmer whose outspoken skepticism made him your target, was hanged in August 1692, leaving his family destitute. His heirs' efforts are part of a broader movement among your survivors to reclaim what was stolen: land, livestock, and above all, dignity. Similarly, Rebecca Nurse's kin fight tirelessly to clear her sullied name. Nurse, a 71-year-old church member whose piety was once unquestioned, was convicted despite your widespread disbelief in her guilt. Her family's campaign to restore her reputation becomes a symbol of resistance against your trial's legacy of shame. Their persistence a rebuke to a community that betrayed one of its own. Your clamour for justice extends beyond individual families to your broader community as you begin to grapple with your complicity in the tragedy. Shame seeps into your bones, a slow but pervasive force that replaces the fervent zeal that drove your madness. Neighbours who once hurled accusations now avert their gazes, haunted by the knowledge that their words sent innocents to the gallows. Ministers who fanned the flames with sermons about Satan's dominion face dwindling congregations, their authority undermined by their role in your hysteria. The Putnam family, whose accusations were among the most prolific, become pariahs in some circles, their social standing eroded by their zealous pursuit of alleged witches. Your village's social fabric, once tightly knit by shared faith, lies in tatters, fractured by mistrust and guilt. Your church pews, once filled with unified worshippers, now hold fractured families, their prayers tinged with regret for the lives lost and the bonds broken. Your trial's collapse sparks a reckoning among your colony's leaders. Governor Phipps, whose initial inaction allowed your hysteria to fester, faces growing criticism for his handling of the crisis. His decision to pardon your remaining prisoners in 1693 is less an act of mercy than a pragmatic move to quell unrest and restore his authority. Yet your pardons come at a cost. Your families are forced to pay for the release of their loved ones, a burden that deepens their resentment toward a government that failed them. Your trial's toll is staggering. 19 hanged, 1 crushed under stones, at least 5 dead in jail, and over 200 accused, their lives upended by a community that turned on itself. Your superior court of judicature, by dismantling the mechanisms of persecution, offers a path toward closure, but it cannot erase the scars left on your soul. Your shift from hysteria to shame is not instantaneous but a gradual awakening, driven by your trial's undeniable excesses and the courage of those who dared to question them. Figures like Increase Mather, whose treatise against spectral evidence helped turn your tide, become voices of moderation in a colony searching for redemption. Even Cotton Mather, whose earlier writings stoked your fears of witchcraft, faces scrutiny for his role, his once unassailable influence waning. Your trial's end marks not only a legal pivot but a cultural one, as you begin to question the theocratic zeal that defined your early years. Your superior court's restraint sets a precedent for evidence-based justice, influencing legal reforms that will later shape the American judicial system. Your trial's legacy, though born in tragedy, lays the groundwork for protections against arbitrary persecution, a hard-won lesson etched in the blood of the innocent. Your reckoning, however, is far from complete. Your village remains a fractured community, its wounds too fresh to heal quickly. Your trials expose not only the dangers of unchecked fear, but the fragility of a society built on rigid conformity. As you free the accused and mourn the executed, you face the daunting task of rebuilding, not just your economy, ravaged by neglected fields and disrupted trade, but your moral and social foundations. Your superior court of judicature dismantled the judicial machinery of your witch hunt, but it cannot restore the trust that was shattered or the lives that were lost. Your trial's end is a moment of relief, but also a mirror held up to a community that must confront its own capacity for cruelty and delusion. Governor Phipps, stung by your colony's growing infamy, issues pardons for your remaining prisoners in 1693. But your freedom comes at a bitter cost. Many of your families pay jail fees to reclaim their loved ones, a final indignity after losing nearly everything. Your toll is devastating. 19 hanged, 1 crushed under stones, 5 dead in wretched cells, and over 200 accused. Their lives are shattered, their names stained. Your court implodes, leaving a crater of grief and disbelief that scars your community. Your trials are over, but your reckoning has only begun. Your village emerges a shadow of itself, its gallows silent but its wounds screaming. Neighbours who once shared pews can no longer meet each other's eyes, your trust broken, your prayers tainted by betrayal. The afflicted girls fade into obscurity, some flee, others sink into anonymity. In 1706 offers a rare apology, confessing her remorse and blaming her actions on Satan's delusion. But her words cannot mend the wreckage. Her apology is a whisper against a storm of loss. Your court officials carry their shame. Judge Samuel Sewall, in 1697, stands in church as his confession of guilt is read, a rare act of contrition in an era where most prefer denial, but the past refuses to be buried. Forgetting is impossible. Your families of the condemned pour their grief into action, petitioning your Massachusetts government for pardons, property restoration, and acknowledgement of innocence. Their persistence bears fruit, though imperfectly. In 1711, a bill restores the rights and reputations of some victims, offering meagre restitution to their heirs. Yet many, like the Coreys and Proctors, are overlooked. Their grievance is lingering. Your government's efforts are a reluctant nod to the wounds it inflicted, but the scars remain raw. Your shame becomes your identity, a mark you cannot shed. Your village later changes its name to Danvers, as if a new label could erase your sins. Gallows Hill, where lives were taken, is never officially memorialized, a silent testament to your desire to bury your deeds. Yet memory endures, in sermons grappling with guilt, stories whispered through generations, and silences that speak louder than confessions. You were not cursed by witches, but by your own fear, hubris, and unchecked belief. That curse lingers, haunting you long after the ropes are cut. Your trial's aftermath ripples through your community, reshaping its social and spiritual fabric. Your congregations fracture as parishioners grapple with their roles in the tragedy. Ministers like Samuel Parris face backlash. He is driven from Salem in 1697, his reputation tarnished by his complicity in your trial's early days. Families like the Putnams, whose accusations fueled your frenzy, become pariahs in some circles, their influence waning. Your village's economy staggers, fields lie untended, trade falters, and the cost of imprisoning hundreds drains communal resources. The psychological toll is incalculable. Survivors like Dorothy Good carry trauma into adulthood, their lives marked by the chains of childhood. Widows and orphans struggle to rebuild, their social standing eroded by association with the accused. Your trust, once the glue of your Puritan society, is shattered, replaced by suspicion that lingers for generations. Beyond your village, your trials send shockwaves through the colonies. Your Massachusetts reputation suffers, its theocratic experiment questioned by a world watching in horror. Your trials expose the fragility of a system where faith trumps reason, where courts can be swayed by fear rather than evidence. They spark debates about governance, justice, and the role of religion in public life. Priest Mather's denunciation of spectral evidence marks a turning point, signaling a shift toward rationalism in your Puritan thought. His son, Cotton Mather, who initially fanned your fears with writings on witchcraft, faces criticism for his role, his influence dimming. Your trials become a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when zeal outstrips restraint. Your legal repercussions are profound. The collapse of your court of Oyer and Terminer exposes the dangers of unchecked judicial power. Your superior court of judicature, with its stricter standards, sets a precedent for evidence-based justice. These lessons echo in the framing of the US Constitution decades later, which enshrines protections against arbitrary persecution, rights to counsel, confrontation of accusers, and evidence over hearsay. Your trial's legacy shapes America's legal DNA, a bulwark against the tyranny of panic. Your legacy weaves itself deeply into the cultural fabric of America and beyond, leaving an indelible mark on literature, art, theatre, and collective memory. Later generations wrestle with its haunting significance, seeking to unravel your trial's moral and human implications. Nathaniel Hawthorne, a descendant of Judge John Hawthorne, channels his ancestral guilt into works like The Scarlet Letter and Young Goodman Brown, where themes of sin, shame, and hidden darkness echo your paranoia. Arthur Miller's The Crucible, 1953, transforms your trials into a searing allegory for McCarthyism's anti-communist hysteria, portraying a community devoured by fear-driven accusations. Miller's play, with its stark parallels to blacklists and ruined lives, cements you as a universal symbol of persecution born from ideological zeal. The term witch hunt slips into everyday language, a potent shorthand for baseless crusades against the innocent, though its casual use often dilutes the visceral horror of your gallows. Visual arts capture your trial's grim spectacle. Paintings of spectral courtroom scenes and somber gallows hills evoke a community unmoored from reason. You become a pilgrimage site. Your memorials, like the 1992 Salem Witch Trials Memorial, and museums such as the Salem Witch Museum, drawing thousands seeking to confront your darkness. Yet these retellings risk romanticizing your tragedy, casting it as quaint colonial folklore or a spooky tale for tourists, rather than a raw human catastrophe where real lives were shattered by fear's relentless grip. Modern media, from films to novels, often lean into the supernatural allure, overshadowing your true weight, a community's betrayal of its own, driven by panic and prejudice. Your trial's root causes remain a subject of fervent debate, a puzzle with no single solution. Historians and scholars point to a web of social tensions that erupted under your pressure. Class divides pit your struggling farmers against wealthier merchants, fueling resentment that found an outlet in accusations. Gender roles play a pivotal role. Women, particularly those who defied your ideals of submission, are disproportionately targeted, reflecting deep-seated anxieties about female agency in your patriarchal society. Widows like Sarah Osborne, who challenged inheritance norms, or outspoken women like Martha Corey, who questioned your trials, become easy scapegoats. Land disputes, especially among prominent families like the Putnams and Porters, simmer beneath many accusations, with witchcraft charges serving as a weapon to settle scores or seize property. Psychological explanations abound. The afflicted girl's fits may stem from trauma, repressed stress in your rigid society, or even ergot poisoning, a fungal toxin in rye bread linked to convulsions and hallucinations. Medical historians note that symptoms like those of Betty Paris and Abigail Williams align with ergotism, though evidence remains circumstantial. Your religious fervor, stoked by fiery sermons from figures like Cotton Mather, paints Satan as an omnipresent threat, priming you for panic. Your Puritan worldview, with its binary of divine versus demonic, leaves no room for ambiguity. Misfortune is God's wrath or Satan's work, and witches are your tangible enemy. Political instability exacerbates your chaos. Governor Phipps's weak leadership, coupled with your charter disputes and uncertain legal status, creates a governance vacuum that fear eagerly fills. No single factor explains your madness. It is a perfect storm of human frailty, fear, faith, envy, and power colliding in a crucible of desperation. Your Salem witch trials, now over 3 centuries removed, resonate as a haunting echo in your collective consciousness, far beyond the pages of history or the cobblestone streets of modern Danvers. They were not a mere footnote of delusion, but a catastrophic collapse of your reason, compassion, and moral integrity, where you turned on yourself with devastating ferocity. You, ordinary farmers toiling in fields, midwives tending to births, ministers preaching salvation, mothers nurturing families, became unwitting executioners, swayed by unexamined beliefs and silenced by terror's chokehold. Your courts, designed as bulwarks of justice, were twisted into instruments of oppression, their verdicts forged in the heat of panic rather than the light of evidence. Your faith, meant to guide and uplift, was perverted into fanaticism, transforming sacred spaces into arenas of accusation. Testimony became a grotesque theatre, where the afflicted girl's convulsions held more sway than truth, and your silence was branded as guilt. In mere months, your fear outstripped fact, turning petty grudges, personal vendettas, and fleeting misfortunes into death sentences. No demons or spectral spirits were needed to wreak havoc, only your fervent conviction that they existed, coupled with your willingness to sacrifice your own to appease that fear. Your lessons endure as a stark warning etched into the foundations of modern society. Your trials reveal how fear, when empowered by institutions, be they courts, churches, or governments, becomes a tyranny of its own, relentless and merciless, capable of consuming all in its path. They expose the peril of groupthink, where your dissent is crushed, your skepticism vilified, and your truth sacrificed on the altar of conformity. Your trials underscore the fragility of justice, showing how easily it can be subverted when fear overrides reason, or when those in power abdicate their duty to question. They highlight the dangers of unchecked authority, where spectral evidence or its modern equivalents, rumour, hearsay, or unverified claims can condemn the innocent. Your story is a call for vigilance, not just over external threats, but over the shadows within yourself, the impulses to judge, to scapegoat, to surrender to panic when certainty feels elusive. Your gallows are long dismantled, their ropes rotted away, but their shadows linger, urging you to guard against the darkness that dwells in every heart and community. Your scar is both a testament to your capacity to falter and a clarion call to ensure such a tragedy never repeats. It reminds you that truth is delicate. The life of Fulvia, wife to 3 Roman power players. You were born around 83 BCE into the ambitious and audacious Fulvi, a plebeian family that fought its way into the glittering echelons of Rome's elite. Unlike the patrician clans, whose ancient lineages stretched back to the city's mythic founding, your family, the Fulvi, were relative newcomers, your rise fueled by raw determination and a knack for seizing opportunities in a republic defined by tradition and hierarchy. You hailed from a line that produced consuls, generals, and orators, whose names reverberated through Rome's annals, your legacy a testament to relentless ambition tempered with a flair for disruption. Your father, Marcus Fulvius Bambalio, was an anomaly in this storied line, a man of wealth but little political clout, mocked for his stammering speech, his nickname Bambalio a cruel jab at his faltering tongue. Yet you inherited none of your father's hesitance. From your earliest days you were marked by a fierce intellect and an unyielding will, destined to command attention on Rome's tumultuous stage. You were not born to fade into the background of a man's world. You were forged to challenge the Republic's rigid order and carve your own path through its chaos. Your childhood unfolded in a household pulsing with the rhythms of power and intrigue. Your family's villa was a nexus of Rome's political life, where senators, tribunes, and military commanders gathered to debate war, policy, and betrayal. These were not distant abstractions, but the very air you breathed, the backdrop of your formative years. Rome's politics spilled beyond the forum's marble steps into private chambers where you witnessed marriages forged as strategic pacts, funerals staged as political theatre, and alliances sealed with whispered promises or thinly veiled threats. As a woman of your class, you were expected to embody the ideal of the Roman matron, graceful, educated, and deferential, your influence confined to the domestic sphere, exerted through subtle counsel or silent support. But you rejected this role with a defiance that would define your life. Wealthy, acutely intelligent, and steeped in your family's connections, you refused to be a passive figurehead. Though historical records of your early years are sparse, Your later actions reveal a young woman who absorbed the Republic's power games with a strategist's precision. Observant, fearless, and poised to claim a role in a world dominated by men. You studied the levers of influence, from the Senate's decrees to the mob's passions, preparing to wield them with a mastery few could match. You came of age as the Roman Republic teetered on the brink of collapse, its foundations cracked by civil wars, populist uprisings, and the ambitions of titans like Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. The city was a crucible of violence and opportunity, its streets alive with the clamour of factions and the stench of blood. The old rules of governance, rooted in shared power and republican virtue, were eroding, replaced by a brutal contest for supremacy. Land reforms sparked riots. Proscriptions filled the streets with corpses, and the Senate's authority waned as warlords rose. This was no time for timidity, and you thrived in the chaos. Your upbringing did not mold you into the demure matron Rome revered. It forged a warrior who saw politics as a battlefield where intellect, courage, and audacity were your weapons. You would marry 3 men, each a radical force in Rome's unraveling saga, but you were never content to merely stand beside power. You would command armies, orchestrate rebellions, and become the first Roman woman to see your name etched on coinage, not as a divine allegory or a symbolic figure, but as a living, breathing force who reshaped the Republic. Rome was unprepared for your audacity, but you were more than ready to seize its reins and bend its history to your will. Your first marriage, to Publius Clodius Pulcher, in the early 50s BCE, was a bold alliance that shattered the conventions of Roman matrimony. Clodius was no ordinary noble. He was a populist firebrand, a master of scandal and street-level power who wielded chaos with the flair of a seasoned showman. To the Senate's patrician elite, he was a dangerous upstart, a threat to their authority. To the plebs, he was a champion who spoke their language and fought for their rights. To you, he was a partner whose ambition matched yours. Clodius's career was marked by provocations that electrified Rome. He had once infiltrated a sacred women-only ritual at Julius Caesar's home, disguised as a woman, a stunt that scandalized the city yet cemented his notoriety. Later, he renounced his patrician status to become a tribune of the plebes, a move that gave him veto power over the Senate and made him a hero to Rome's masses. You were no passive observer in this marriage. You stood at Clodius's side, engaging his supporters, appearing at his campaigns, and transforming your household into a nerve center of populist fervor. Together, you were a revolutionary force, bold, unrelenting, and deeply attuned to the restless energy of Rome's urban poor. Your role was not that of a traditional wife, but of a co-strategist, your influence amplifying Clodius's campaigns to redistribute land, secure grain supplies, and challenge the Senate's grip on power. Your partnership, however, was cut tragically short. In 52 BCE, Clodius was ambushed and killed on the Appian Way by the bodyguards of his rival, Titus Annius Milo, a champion of the Senate's conservative faction. His murder was a spark in Rome's tinderbox, threatening to ignite the city's simmering tensions into outright anarchy. You, however, refused to retreat into the expected role of a grieving widow. Instead, you orchestrated a funeral that was less a rite of mourning than a masterstroke of political theatre. You paraded Clodius's mutilated body through the forum, its wounds exposed to inflame the crowd's horror and fury. The spectacle was meticulously calculated. The sight of Clodius's corpse, borne through Rome's heart, unleashed a tidal wave of rage among the plebs. Riots erupted, the Senate House was set ablaze, and Rome teetered on the edge of collapse. You had turned personal loss into a public uprising, your first major act as a political force in your own right. Your ability to harness the mob's passion, wield spectacle as a weapon, and transform your husband's death into a rallying cry marked you as a strategist of rare cunning. Clodius was gone, but you had claimed the stage, and Rome would never again see you as merely a widow. You did not linger in sorrow. In Rome, power was a fleeting currency, and you understood its value better than most. Soon after Clodius's death, you married Gaius Scribonius Curio, a charismatic and cunning ally of Julius Caesar. Curio was a rising star, a tribune in 50 BCE whose theatrical oratory and bold maneuvers made him a force in Rome's volatile politics. To some, he seemed an unlikely match for you, his flamboyance contrasting with your steely resolve, but beneath his bravado lay a sharp political mind, and you saw in him a bridge to Caesar's growing faction. This marriage was no act of passion. It was a calculated alliance, a strategic move to sustain your influence in a city where power shifted with every assassination and election. With Clodius dead, you needed a new anchor to maintain your grip on Rome's political currents, and Curio, backed by Caesar and heir to Clodius's populist legacy, was the ideal choice. You rallied Clodius's supporters, redirecting their loyalty to Curio's cause, and worked tirelessly to keep Rome's urban masses engaged in the political fray. Your home became a hub for Caesar's allies, where strategies were planned, loyalties secured, and the pulse of the city's unrest was measured. As tensions between Caesar and Pompey erupted into civil war, Curio threw himself into the conflict on Caesar's side, leading campaigns to secure the general's position. You played a vital role behind the scenes, organizing resources, rallying support, and bolstering your husband's efforts. In 49 BCE, Curio led a military expedition to Africa to confront Pompey's allies, but the mission ended in disaster. Ambushed by the forces of King Juba of Numidia, Curio was killed, his army annihilated. For the second time you were widowed, and Rome watched to see if you would falter. You did not. Curio's death only sharpened your resolve, cementing you as a political survivor of unparalleled tenacity. Having lost 2 husbands to Rome's relentless strife, both champions of the people's cause, you stood unbowed, your ambition burning brighter than ever. Your ability to navigate loss and maintain your influence in the face of personal tragedy marked you as a figure of extraordinary resilience, poised for an even greater role in Rome's unfolding drama. Your third marriage to Mark Antony around 47 BCE was your most formidable alliance yet. Antony, Caesar's trusted general, was a man of raw charisma and reckless excess, his life a whirlwind of battlefield triumphs, staggering deaths, and scandalous affairs. Yet in you he found a partner who matched his boldness and surpassed his political instincts. Your union was no mere romance, it was a merger of power and purpose, a partnership that would reshape Rome's trajectory. You brought your mastery of Rome's streets, your ability to sway crowds, and your network of populist allies. Antony offered his military might, his charisma, and Caesar's favour. By now you were a veteran of Rome's brutal politics, tempered by loss, betrayal, and the hard lessons of survival. Antony, for all his flaws, recognized your genius, granting you authority no Roman woman had ever wielded openly. You read his correspondence, issued orders in his absence, sat in on strategy sessions, and shaped his political appointments. To Rome's traditionalists, you were an outrage, a woman daring to act with the authority of a man. The hostile chroniclers like Cicero branded you domineering, their venom betraying their fear. You were rewriting the rules of power in a city unaccustomed to such a woman. Your influence was not confined to whispers in private chambers, it was visible, undeniable, and revolutionary. When Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Rome plunged into chaos, its streets a battleground for rival factions vying for control. Antony moved swiftly to claim Caesar's mantle, forming the Second Triumvirate with Octavian and Lepidus to stabilize the Republic. While Antony campaigned across the empire, you held Rome's turbulent heart. You managed Antony's patronage networks, rallied his supporters, and wielded influence over the city's gangs. You even brokered a tenuous truce with Octavian by arranging the marriage of your daughter Clodia to him, a pact that would later collapse under the weight of mutual ambition. Your power was so undeniable that Roman coins bore your name alongside Antony's, a historic first for any woman. These coins were not mere symbols, they were a declaration of your authority, a testament to your role as a political force in your own right. You were no shadow behind Antony, you were a beacon, radiating influence in a city that had never seen a woman command so openly. As Antony campaigned in the east, forging alliances and consolidating power, you became his de facto regent in Rome. In a world where power was sustained by violence, bribery, and raw influence, you proved yourself a master of the game. You directed Antony's allies, negotiated with rival factions, and secured legislation to bolster his cause. You funded loyal troops, swayed public opinion with your deft rhetoric, and cultivated deep ties with Rome's veterans, a critical force in the Republic's power struggles. Ancient sources, often steeped in patriarchal bias, painted you as manipulative or warlike, but their scorn masked a grudging respect for a woman who outmaneuvered senators and generals alike. You built coalitions, issued decrees, and stood as Antony's voice in Italy, meeting with centurions, shaping land distribution policies, and ensuring soldiers' loyalty with promises of reward. Your home was a command centre, where messengers arrived with news from the provinces, and plans were drawn to secure Antony's dominance in a fracturing republic. Your ascent, however, drew powerful enemies. Octavian's faction, wary of Antony's rising star, despised your influence. Your independence, acting without a male guardian, was a direct challenge to Rome's patriarchal order. You sensed the growing rift between Antony and Octavian, understanding a truth neither man fully grasped. The Republic was too small to contain both. You prepared for conflict, your instincts honed by years of navigating Rome's treacherous currents. In 41 BCE, you made your boldest move yet. You declared war on Octavian, the future Augustus. Alongside Antony's brother, Lucius Antonius, a consul, you raised 8 legions and seized the city of Perusia, igniting the Perusian War. On the surface, the conflict was about protecting Antony's veterans' land rights, which Octavian's policies threatened to undermine, but your hand was unmistakable. You organized troops, rallied public support, and corresponded with generals, your resolve driving the rebellion. Rome buzzed with tales of you commanding legions, a woman stepping into a role reserved for men, your audacity both thrilling and terrifying to a city unaccustomed to such defiance. Octavian, caught off guard by your audacity, responded with ruthless efficiency. He besieged Perusia through the brutal winter of 41-40 BCE, cutting off supplies and pounding the city into submission with his armies. You, trapped by dwindling resources and wavering allies, watched your daring gamble unravel. The siege was merciless. Starvation gripped the city, and morale collapsed as Octavian's forces tightened their grip. In early 40 BCE, Perusia fell. Lucius was spared, likely to avoid further alienating Antony, but you were deemed too dangerous to remain in Rome. You were exiled to Sicyon, Greece, your power stripped away in a single stroke. You had waged war in Antony's name, believing you were safeguarding his power and your shared vision of a Rome remade in your image. Yet Antony did not rush to your side. By then he was entangled with Cleopatra in Egypt, his loyalties divided by ambition and passion. Some historians argue he was furious at your unauthorized war, claiming it sparked tensions he had sought to avoid. Others suggest your fall cleared his path to a new alliance with Octavian. Alone in Sicyon, your health shattered by the siege, exile, and the sting of abandonment, you died in 40 BCE at the age of 43. Likely from illness, exhaustion, or a broken heart. Or perhaps all three. Your death was a political escape for Antony. Soon after, he married Octavian's sister, Octavia, sealing a fragile truce between the triumvirs. Your legacy was quickly overshadowed by Cleopatra's mythic allure, your story buried under layers of propaganda and patriarchal disdain. Ancient historians, Appian, Dio Cassius, Plutarch, cast you as the architect of Rome's woes, a jealous, power-hungry schemer who sowed discord and dragged the Republic into chaos. They blamed you for the Perusine War, for the rift between Antony and Octavian, for the unraveling of the triumvirate's fragile unity. Their accusations, however, crumble under scrutiny. You were no more ruthless than Caesar, no more cunning than Pompey, and far less cruel than Octavian, whose later reign as Augustus would be marked by calculated brutality. Your true crime was your gender, a woman daring to wield power with the audacity of a man. You wrote to generals, rallied street mobs, and commanded the loyalty of soldiers, actions that made you a threat not just to Octavian, but to the very narrative of Rome's patriarchal order. Antony, seeking peace with Octavian, allowed your memory to be sacrificed. Your death became a diplomatic tool, your name a scapegoat for his own ambitions. No monuments rose in your honour, no orations mourned your passing, just a heavy, deliberate silence. Yet your presence could not be fully erased. You had raised armies, steered elections, and forged alliances that shaped Rome's fate. Your name on Roman coins marked you as a political force, not a symbolic figure. The campaign to vilify you was deliberate, but so was your impact. You broke every rule of Roman womanhood, refusing to advise power from the shadows and instead embodying it with unapologetic force. Later women, Livia Drusilla, Agrippina the Younger, even Cleopatra in her own realm would walk paths you had carved, manipulating empires, commanding armies, and shaping dynasties. But you did it first, without the shield of an imperial title or the legitimacy of a throne. Your downfall was not a failure of competence, but a collision with a world unready for your ambition. Had you been born a man, you might have been hailed as a second Caesar or a more charismatic Cato. Instead, you were cast as the villainess who dared too much. Your Rome was a city of stark contradictions, a republic that cloaked itself in the rhetoric of virtue while thriving on the raw brutality of violence. A society that venerated tradition, yet buckled under the relentless pressure of transformation. Your life was a vivid reflection of this duality, a constant navigation of the chasm between the roles society imposed upon you and the boundless ambition that drove you to transcend them. Each of your marriages was a calculated act of strategy, a maneuver to secure your place in Rome's treacherous political landscape. Each widowhood became a crucible, forging your resolve into something fiercer, unyielding, and unbreakable. With Publius Clodius Pulcher, you mastered the art of channeling the crowd's volatile passion, transforming Rome's chaotic streets into a weapon of political influence that shook the Senate's foundations. With Gaius Scribonius Curio, you honed your skill in coalition building, weaving intricate networks of loyalty that bolstered Julius Caesar's ascendancy and sustained the populist cause. With Mark Antony, you wielded power on a scale that rivaled Rome's greatest men, commanding legions, shaping alliances, and leaving an indelible mark on the Republic's final tumultuous days. To your enemies, senators, patricians, and traditionalists, you were a disruption, a woman who dared to upend the natural order of a patriarchal world. But to those who saw beyond the biases of your time, you were a visionary, a strategist who perceived the Republic's fault lines with crystalline clarity and sought to exploit them, not for fleeting personal gain, but for a vision of power that would outlast your mortal life. Your Parisine War of 4140 BCE stood as your boldest and most defining act, a testament to your audacity and a tragic prelude to your downfall. It showcased your unparalleled ability to rally armies, sway public sentiment, and challenge a titan like Octavian, the future Augustus, whose cold ambition would reshape Rome. You raised 8 legions alongside Antony's brother, Lucius Antonius, seizing the city of Perusia in a daring bid to protect Antony's veterans and assert his dominance. Your leadership electrified Rome, your name whispered in awe and fear as you stepped into roles reserved for men, general, strategist, revolutionary. Yet the war also laid bare the limits of your world, a republic that could tolerate a woman's influence only when it remained veiled, discreet, and subordinate. Your open defiance shattered this illusion, and the backlash was swift and merciless. Octavian's siege of Perusia was a brutal affair, starving the city into submission through a bitter winter. Your gamble unraveled as supplies dwindled and allies faltered, your vision of victory crushed under the weight of Octavian's relentless campaign. Your exile to Sicyon, Greece was not merely a punishment, but Rome's desperate attempt to restore an order you had so thoroughly disrupted. Your death in 40 BCE at the age of 43 was a quiet, almost anticlimactic end for a woman whose life had been a tempest of action and ambition. Worn by the siege, exile, and the sting of Antony's absence, entangled as he was with Cleopatra in Egypt, you succumbed, likely to illness, exhaustion, or heartbreak, or perhaps a confluence of all three. Yet even in death, you cast a long and inescapable shadow over Rome's destiny. Antony's reconciliation with Octavian, sealed by his marriage to Octavia, Octavian's sister, was possible only because you were no longer a force to contend with. Your removal cleared the path for a fragile truce between the triumvirs, a diplomatic maneuver that might have been unthinkable in your presence. Cleopatra's legend, which would later dominate Rome's imagination, owed an unspoken debt to the trail you blazed, a woman who proved that power could be seized, not merely granted, by the whims of men. Your audacity paved the way for Cleopatra's own defiance, though history would remember the Egyptian queen with mythic grandeur while relegating you to the margins. Your coins, bearing your name alongside Antony's, were a historic first, a tangible symbol of your authority that no amount of propaganda could erase. Your rebellions, your alliances, your unrelenting drive, these were the acts of a leader who refused to be confined by the constraints of your gender or your era. Centuries later, your story refuses to fade into obscurity, its resonance growing as modern historians peel back the layers of ancient bias to reveal your true stature. No longer dismissed as a cautionary tale of overreaching ambition, you were recognized as a trailblazer, one of Rome's most dynamic and influential political figures. You tested the boundaries of female power in a society that sought to shackle it, challenging the patriarchal norms that confined women to the domestic sphere. Your life was a high-stakes gamble, and you paid the ultimate price: exile, erasure, and death, far from the city you had shaped. Yet your fingerprints are indelible, etched into every corner of the Republic's collapse. You were no mere footnote in the age of triumvirs. You were a force who rivaled their dominion, reshaping their world with a courage and intellect that matched Rome's greatest statesmen. Your life stands as a testament to what a woman could achieve in a man's arena, a beacon for those who dare to defy the constraints of their time. Your legacy, though buried beneath the scorn of your enemies, endures as a clarion call to challenge the boundaries of power and rewrite the rules of history. Your story is a stark reminder that history is not a neutral arbiter, but a battleground of narratives, shaped by those with the power to write it. The ancient sources, Appian, Dio Cassius, Plutarch, chronicled your life through the lens of a culture that feared women like you, their pens dripping with the biases of a patriarchal order. They sought to reduce you to a caricature, a shrew, a seductress, a disruptor whose ambitions sowed chaos. Yet their words, when read with a critical eye, reveal a different truth. A woman of unparalleled courage, intellect, and ambition, who navigated Rome's treacherous waters with a skill that rivaled Caesar, Pompey, or Cicero. Your coins, struck with your name, were not the whims of vanity but declarations of authority. Your rebellions, from the riots after Clodius's death to the legions of Perusia, were not acts of recklessness but calculated moves to shape Rome's future. Your alliances, forged through marriage and strategy, were the threads that wove you into the fabric of the Republic's final days. These were not the deeds of a villain, but of a leader who refused to be silenced by your gender or your time. Today, your legacy is being reclaimed with a vigor that honors your true significance. Scholars, freed from the prejudices of ancient Rome, recognize you as a pivotal figure in the Republic's twilight, a woman who challenged the triumvirs and left an indelible mark on their world. You were not content to whisper counsel in the ears of powerful men. You sought to stand among them, to command as they did, to shape history with the same audacity that defined their legacies. Your life was a rebellion against the constraints of your era, a refusal to accept the roles assigned to you by a society that revered tradition over justice. And though Rome sought to bury you, vilifying your name and erasing your contributions, your story endures, a radiant beacon for those who dare to defy the boundaries of their world. You were no mere player in the age of giants, you were a giant yourself, a woman centuries ahead of your time, whose echoes still reverberate through the ruins of the Republic you helped to unravel. Your Rome was not just a city, but a crucible, where ideals of virtue clashed with the realities of power, and where tradition crumbled under the weight of relentless ambition. Your life was a mirror of this tension, a constant negotiation between the expectations of Roman womanhood and the drive to claim a place among the Republic's titans. With Clodius, you learned to wield the mob's passion as a weapon, turning grief into rebellion and streets into battlegrounds. With Curio, you became a master of political networks, sustaining Caesar's cause through deft alliances and tireless advocacy. With Antony, you ascended to a level of influence that shocked Rome, commanding armies, shaping policy, and leaving your names on coins that circulated through the empire. Your enemies branded you a threat, a woman who dared too much. But their fear betrayed their respect, for you were no ordinary adversary. You were a visionary who saw the Republic's fragility and sought to shape its collapse into something new, a world remade where power was not confined by gender or tradition. Your Perisine War was the zenith of your ambition and the prelude to your tragedy. It was a war born of necessity, a desperate bid to protect Antony's legacy and secure his veterans' rights against Octavian's encroachments. Your leadership was a marvel. You raised legions, rallied Rome's masses, and coordinated with generals, your resolve a beacon in a city fracturing under rival ambitions. Yet the war also revealed the limits of your world, a society that could not abide a woman's open exercise of power. Octavian's siege was a brutal reminder of this reality, starving Perusia into submission and leaving your vision shattered. Your exile was Rome's attempt to erase you, to restore a patriarchal order you had defied. Your death in Sicyon, far from the forum's roar, was a quiet end for a life defined by unrelenting action. Yet your shadow lingered, shaping the triumvir's fragile peace and paving the way for Cleopatra's legend, which would eclipse your own, but could not exist without your precedent. Your story is a testament to the power of defiance, a reminder that history's narratives are written by the victors, but can be reclaimed by those who seek truth. The ancient historians sought to vilify you, casting you as a schemer who plunged Rome into chaos, but their words, read closely, reveal a woman who outmaneuvered senators, inspired legions, and reshaped the Republic's final days. Your coins were not mere tokens, but symbols of a power Rome could not contain. Your rebellions were not failures, but acts of courage that challenged the status quo. Your alliances were not manipulations, but the work of a strategist who saw power as a tool to remake the world. Modern scholars, unburdened by Rome's biases, see you as you were, a trailblazer who defied the constraints of your time and paid the price for your audacity. Your life was a rebellion against the roles assigned to you, a refusal to be confined by gender or tradition. And though Rome sought to silence you, your legacy endures, a radiant light for those who dare to challenge the boundaries of their world. You were no mere figure in the age of triumvirs, you were a force who rivaled their power and reshaped their Rome, a woman whose story echoes through the ages as a call to defy, to dream, and to dare. The March on Washington, 1963. In the summer of 1963, you stand at a crossroads in the United States, caught between two irreconcilable worlds, one rooted in centuries-old systems of racial oppression, and another reaching toward the promise of freedom. In the Deep South, segregation is not just a tradition, but a legal fortress, its walls fortified by laws that bar you as a Black American from restaurants, schools, buses, voting booths, and even the simple dignity of a public drinking fountain. Police brutality is a constant shadow over your life. Lynchings remain a brutal reminder of unchecked hatred, and in cities like Birmingham, Alabama, you face the snarling jaws of police dogs and the punishing blast of high-pressure fire hoses when you dare to protest peacefully. Yet, amid this suffocating injustice, you feel a tide of change rising, unyielding and unapologetic. The civil rights movement, in just a few short years, has ignited your nation's conscience. Your sit-ins, freedom rides and boycotts fill headlines, transforming your acts of resistance into a clarion call for justice. Figures like Rosa Parks, Medgar Evers, and John Lewis emerge not merely as names, but as emblems of your defiance, their courage galvanizing you and the nation. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, set for August 1963, is no sudden spark. It is the culmination of decades of your frustration, hope, and unrelenting demand for equality. You are done waiting, ready to claim your rights, and you choose the nation's capital as the stage to make your voice resound. The idea of a mass march on Washington, D.C. is not new to you. Decades earlier, in the 1940 SA, Philip Randolph, a towering labor organizer and civil rights visionary, proposed a similar march to pressure President Franklin D. Roosevelt into desegregating the defense industry. That effort was shelved when Roosevelt yielded, signing an executive order to end discriminatory practices in war employment. But by 1963, your stakes have escalated far beyond jobs alone. Randolph, now joined by luminaries like Bayard Rustin and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., revives the idea with a broader, more urgent vision. This is no mere protest for economic opportunity. It is your demand for dignity, voting rights, integrated schools, equal pay, and the fundamental right to live free from fear. Over a dozen civil rights organizations, often at odds over strategy and ideology, unite for your singular purpose, recognizing that a fractured movement cannot sway a nation. Your planning is monumental. You charter buses from every corner of the country, blanket communities with flyers, and spread word of mouth like wildfire, outpacing even the swiftest newspapers. From rural hamlets to urban centers, you, as a Black American, and your allies prepare for a moment that will etch itself into the annals of history. Your dream is no longer a distant hope. It is taking form, one determined step at a time. Organizing a protest in the nation's capital is a daunting task for you, but orchestrating one expected to draw over 100,000 people, potentially far more, is a feat of near impossible complexity. The logistics alone are staggering. You need food and water for thousands, transportation networks spanning states, sound systems to carry your voices across the National Mall, portable restrooms, medical teams, permits, crowd control measures, and comprehensive safety plans. Yet, against all odds, you make it happen. At the heart of this intricate operation is Bayard Rustin, a strategist of unparalleled brilliance, whose personal courage matches his logistical genius. Openly gay in an era when such an identity invites scorn and danger, Rustin is often relegated to the shadows for political expediency. Yet, his vision for your march is unwavering. Having studied non-violent resistance under the tutelage of Mahatma Gandhi's followers in India, Rustin brings a disciplined, almost military precision to your planning. He has endured arrests, beatings, and relentless FBI surveillance, but his resolve never falters. To him, your march on Washington is a chance to demonstrate the transformative power of non-violent protest on a global stage. In just 8 weeks, Rustin and your team turn a bold idea into a reality, crafting an event officially named the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Your dual focus on racial justice and economic equity is deliberate, reflecting the intertwined struggles of discrimination and poverty. While Dr. King will later become your march's moral beacon, it is Randolph and Rustin who ensure your demands encompass not only civil rights, but also unemployment, a living wage, and workers' protection. Beneath the surface of your unified effort, tensions simmer. President John F. Kennedy's administration views your march with trepidation, fearing it could erupt into riots or provoke violent backlash. You, through your civil rights leaders, repeatedly assure the White House of your commitment to peace, but the government takes no chances. The National Guard is placed on standby. DC hospitals are alerted for potential casualties, and liquor sales are banned citywide on the day of your event. Federal employees are even encouraged to stay home, a subtle acknowledgement of the government's anxiety. Within your movement, unity is hard won. Your Big Six organizations, the NAACP, CORE, SNCC, SCLC, the National Urban League, and Randolph's Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, often diverge sharply on tactics. SNCC's young activists, impatient with the slow grind of non-violent protest, push for more confrontational action, while others, like the NAACP, favour measured diplomacy. Yet you all agree that the moment demands a collective stand. Rustin's organisational blueprint is meticulous. You track every bus and train, allocate every speaker's time slot precisely, and patrol every route with marshals trained in crowd management. This is no mere demonstration. It is your carefully choreographed moment designed to awaken a nation's conscience. On August 28, 1963, a sweltering Wednesday in Washington, D.C., the air is thick with humidity, but it cannot deter the tide of humanity that you help flood into the Capitol. By 9:00 a.m., the sun beats down relentlessly, yet you keep coming. Black and white, young and old, students, clergy, labourers, and celebrities. You arrive by bus, train, carpool, and even on foot, your numbers swelling to over 250,000, a sea of hope converging on the National Mall. Despite the government's fears of chaos, your scene is one of extraordinary calm. You guide foot traffic with practiced ease as a volunteer, distribute water to parched marchers with the Red Cross, and link arms with groups, singing freedom songs that echo across the Capitol. Gospel choirs perform near the reflecting pool, their voices mingling with your chants of jobs and freedom that reverberate off the Lincoln Memorial's marble columns. Celebrities like Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, Joan Baez, and Bob Dylan lend their presence, not for fame, but to amplify your cause. You are disciplined, yet electric, with no trace of the violence authorities dreaded. Instead, you share a profound sense of purpose, a collective understanding that this is not merely a protest, but a sacred act of witness. For you, as a Black American, standing on the Mall is itself a revolutionary act, a declaration of your presence, your visibility, in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial, where the great emancipator's statue looms as a symbol of unfulfilled promises. This is a moment generations in the making, a bridge between the Emancipation Proclamation and the future you are still fighting for. At noon, your official program begins, with leaders taking the stage to represent a mosaic of organizations, regions, and ideologies, all united in your call for justice. Your speeches demand equal pay, integrated schools, a living wage, and an end to police brutality. Mahalia Jackson's voice soars in song, and Marian Anderson, once barred from performing at Constitution Hall due to her race, now sings for 250,000 of you under an open sky. As the day progresses, your anticipation builds, not from fear of unrest, but from the weight of expectation. You know something momentous is approaching, and your hushed focus signals your readiness for a voice that will define the day. By mid-afternoon, that moment arrives. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. steps to the podium in the shade of the Lincoln Memorial, his dark suit and calm demeanor belying the fire within. He carries prepared remarks, carefully crafted with his advisors the night before, but what he delivers transcends those pages. He begins with a measured indictment of segregation, police violence, and the nation's broken promises. Down to 100 years later, he declares, invoking the Emancipation Proclamation. You, the Negro, are still not free. His voice, rising and falling like a preacher's sermon, wields repetition, rhythm, and silence as tools of profound power. You hang on every word, some of you nodding in agreement, others wiping tears, your signs reading now a silent plea for urgency. Then, a pivotal moment shifts the speech's course. Mahalia Jackson, standing nearby, calls out, "Tell them about the dream, Martin, tell them about the dream." King pauses, sets aside his notes, and seizes the moment. "I have a dream," he begins, his voice steady but resonant with conviction. "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed." Each phrase grows bolder, clearer, more resolute. "I have a dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The words are no longer a speech, but your vision, your prayer, a seismic force that ripples through history. When he concludes with, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last," you erupt in applause, tears, and shouts of joy, aware you have witnessed not just oratory, but prophecy. Your march's power lies not only in its speeches or music, but in you, the people. The sheer scale of your gathering, over 250,000 souls from Mississippi to Michigan, Alabama to New York, is a testament to your collective resolve. Some of you are veteran activists, hardened by years of struggle. Others are ordinary citizens, maids, teachers, steel workers, postal clerks, who have never protested before but feel compelled to act. You pack lunches, endure 20-hour bus rides, and sleep in your Sunday best just to stand on the mall. Your children are there too, young girls with ribbons in their hair, boys clutching hand-drawn signs, and toddlers hoisted onto your shoulders to glimpse the Lincoln Memorial. For them, this is not just a day, but the dawn of a new world. John Lewis, a mere 23, represents SNCC with a speech so fiery that organizers urge him to soften it moments before he speaks, and see, he complies. But his call for radical change still reverberates for you. Daisy Bates, the only woman to address you, delivers a statement on behalf of other civil rights women, her brief words a reminder of your movement's struggle to amplify female voices. Union organizers, rabbis, nuns, priests, and students of every background stand with you, your differences set aside for a day of unity. Some of you embrace King's nonviolence, others lean toward Malcolm X's militancy. But on August 28th, you are one, a symphony of possibility, with Freedom Now buttons gleaming and hands clasped across racial lines. Behind your march's seamless facade lies a reality of grueling effort and constant compromise. Bayard Rustin, your chief architect, faces relentless scrutiny, not only for his strategic role, but for his identity as an openly gay man and former communist. Some of your leaders fear his presence will taint your movement's image. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell once threatened to smear Rustin and King with false accusations to sideline him. The marginalization of women is another fault line for you. Despite the pivotal contributions of Ella Baker, Diane Nash, and Dorothy Height, no woman is given a major speaking role. Rosa Parks, a revered figure among you, stands in the crowd but is not invited to the podium. Within your Big Six, tensions flare. SNCC's impatience with gradualism clashes with the NAACP's cautious approach, and CORE's radical streak chafes against the SCLC's restraint. Yet your unity prevails, if only for a day. The federal government, meanwhile, watches you with suspicion. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI deploys over 100 agents to monitor your organizers, bugging hotel rooms and compiling dossiers in anticipation of violence or communist infiltration. When your march unfolds peacefully, their surveillance only intensifies, particularly targeting Dr. King. Financially, your event is a gamble, costing over $250,000, 0 cents. Millions in today's dollars, scraped together from unions and donors, with you borrowing walkie-talkies from the Boy Scouts in a last-minute scramble. Your march is historic, but it is also human, flawed, chaotic, and unfinished, a mirror of the nation you seek to transform. As the sun dips behind the Washington Monument, you linger, reluctant to leave what feels like hallowed ground. You hug, cry, sing, and hold tight to the moment. Your speeches are done, your signs raised, the world has watched, and a question looms. What now? In the days that follow, media coverage is cautiously optimistic. Major newspapers note your event's historic weight, though often with a detached tone, praising its orderly nature, a veiled relief that no riots erupted. Few delve into your specific demands, like a federal jobs program or a $2.00 minimum wage, roughly $20.00 today. But Dr. King's speech is inescapable, its words dominating headlines. President Kennedy, initially skeptical of your march, watches it unfold on television and calls it impressive, meeting with your leaders afterward. Yet Congress remains gridlocked, with Kennedy's proposed Civil Rights Act stalled by Southern opposition. You, hoping for swift change, face the reality of continued struggle. Just weeks later, on September 15, 1963, the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham kills 4 black girls, a brutal reminder that your dream is far from realized. Still, your march marks a turning point. It proves that your mass protest can be disciplined, powerful, and undeniable. It forges a coalition of unprecedented breadth. Labor unions, faith leaders, celebrities, and everyday Americans united for your justice. Most crucially, it gives your movement a voice that echoes worldwide. Your march is not an endpoint, but a beginning, a spark that will fuel a grueling journey through bloodshed, legislation, and transformation. It reshapes America's moral landscape, laying the groundwork for seismic change. Less than a year later, in July 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act, banning segregation in public places and employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Voting Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 stand as monumental achievements, dismantling the legal scaffolding of Jim Crow that had entrenched racial segregation and disenfranchisement across the United States for nearly a century. These legislative victories, hard-won through relentless struggle, might have eventually emerged without the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, but your march's moral force and unrelenting public pressure were undeniable catalysts that accelerated their passage. The sight of over 250,000 people, black and white, young and old, united in a sea of hope and determination, flooding the National Mall, sent an unmistakable message to lawmakers and the nation. The time for justice could no longer be delayed. Your collective presence, your voices raised in song and solidarity, transformed the abstract ideals of equality into a tangible demand that reverberated through the halls of Congress and the conscience of a nation. For Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the I Have a Dream speech delivered at the Lincoln Memorial elevated him to the stature of a global icon, a voice not only for black Americans, but for all who yearned for freedom and dignity worldwide. Yet this moment of triumph also cast a long shadow, intensifying the scrutiny, threats, and violence directed at him, culminating in his tragic assassination in 1968. With his death, your dream became even more poignant, its vision tinged with tragedy, but growing ever more revered as a timeless call to action. Your march was not merely a moment, but a movement. its ripples extending far beyond that sweltering August day, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations to carry the torch of justice forward. The legacy of your March on Washington stretches far beyond the summer of 1963, serving as a radiant beacon that illuminates pathways for justice across continents and decades. It offers you a timeless blueprint for large-scale mobilization, a testament to the transformative power of collective action that continues to inspire activists worldwide. In South Africa, anti-apartheid organizers drew profound strength from your unity, studying your strategies of non-violent resistance to dismantle the brutal system of racial oppression that mirrored Jim Crow. Leaders like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu invoked the spirit of your march as they rallied their people, proving that solidarity could topple even the most entrenched systems of injustice. In Europe, student protesters in the 1960s and 1970s echoed your calls for freedom, adapting your language of equality to their struggles against authoritarian regimes and social inequities. From the streets of Prague during the Velvet Revolution to the barricades of Paris in 1968, your march's imagery of peaceful defiance, hands clasped, voices raised in song, became a universal symbol of resistance. The phrase "jobs and freedom," born in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial, has reverberated through time, its cadence alive in every rally you attend, every petition you sign, every movement you champion. This language, forged in the crucible of 1963, remains a clarion call, urging you to demand not just equality under the law, but economic justice, social dignity, and the full realization of human potential for all. The imagery of your peaceful resistance during the March on Washington remains a potent and enduring symbol, etched into the collective memory of humanity. From the Million Man March of 1995, where you gathered in Washington, D.C. to reaffirm your commitment to justice and community empowerment, to the global Black Lives Matter rallies of the 2010s and 2020s, your signs, chants, and unyielding hope echo the defiant spirit of 1963. In every raised fist, in every banner proclaiming no justice, no peace, you see the lineage of your march, its principles reborn in new generations confronting new challenges. The visual power of your unity, diverse faces standing shoulder to shoulder, singing "We Shall Overcome," has inspired countless movements, from the Women's March of 2017, which drew millions to advocate for gender equality, to the climate justice protests led by young activists like Greta Thunberg, who channel your moral clarity to demand systemic change. In Washington, D.C., Dr. King's memorial now stands across the tidal basin, his "I have a dream" words carved in stone, gazing out over the reflecting pool where you once stood. These words are a silent, yet powerful call to you, urging you to keep marching, keep dreaming, keep fighting. Yet your true memorial thrives not in stone, but in the living legacy you create. In classrooms where you teach the next generation about courage and sacrifice, in voting booths where you defend the hard-won rights secured by the Voting Rights Act, and in the voices that refuse to be silenced, demanding equality with unwavering resolve. Your dream was never meant to fade into the pages of history books. It was meant to pulse through your actions, to be lived in every step you take toward justice, every choice you make to confront inequity, and every moment you refuse to accept anything less than the full promise of freedom. More than 6 decades later, the March on Washington endures as a touchstone, a defining moment etched into textbooks, documentaries, and museum exhibits that recount your courage and vision. Dr. King's speech, now a national refrain, is taught to your school children, its phrases quoted in global forums from Nairobi in its words, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character," have become a universal anthem, a shorthand for the aspiration of equality that transcends borders and cultures. Yet, you grapple with a persistent and haunting question. Has your dream been fulfilled or merely deferred? Your progress is undeniable, a testament to the sacrifices of those who marched, sat in, boycotted, and died for the cause. The legal chains of segregation have been shattered, replaced by a framework of civil rights laws that protect against discrimination in public spaces, employment, and housing. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 secured your right to the ballot, empowering black communities to elect leaders who reflect their interests. Black Americans have risen to positions of power unimaginable in 1963, from mayors and governors to the presidency itself, with Barack Obama's election in 2008 standing as a historic milestone. Interracial marriage, once banned in many states, is now protected under federal law, a quiet but profound victory for love and equality. These are your hard-won triumphs, forged in the heat of your struggle, paid for with the blood, sweat and tears of countless activists who refuse to bow to oppression. Yet, even as you celebrate these victories, you confront the sobering reality that your march's core demands remain frustratingly out of reach for many. The call for jobs and freedom encompassed not just legal equality but economic justice, a living wage, equitable education, fair housing, dignified employment and accessible health care. These aspirations, so boldly proclaimed in 1963, continue to elude millions of Americans, particularly in black and marginalized communities. Racial disparities in wealth, health, and criminal justice persist, stark reminders that systemic inequities have deep roots that laws alone cannot uproot. The median wealth of white families remains nearly 10 times that of black families, a gap widened by decades of discriminatory policies like redlining and unequal access to education and employment. Healthcare disparities laid bare during the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that black Americans face higher mortality rates and less access to quality care. Police brutality, a scourge that sparked your outrage in the 1960s, continues to claim black lives, from Rodney King in 1991 to George Floyd in 2020, fueling movements that carry your 1963 spirit into a world transformed by social media and new forms of resistance. From Ferguson to Minneapolis, you see echoes of your march in every protest, every hashtag, as Black Lives Matter wields your imagery to inspire, critique, and demand accountability. The movement's decentralized structure, amplified by platforms like Twitter and Instagram, mirrors your march's grassroots energy, proving that the tools of activism may change, but the hunger for justice remains constant. Your march was not a conclusion, but a bold declaration, a stake in the ground proclaiming, "This is who you are, and this is what you demand." It was a challenge to the nation and to future generations to live up to the ideals of democracy, to confront the gap between America's promises and its reality. Whether your dream is deferred or fulfilled rests on the choices you make today, the injustices you confront with unyielding resolve, and the courage you summon to march again. You march through the streets, carrying signs that demand an end to systemic racism and economic inequality. You march through the voting booth, casting ballots to elect leaders who will uphold the principles of justice and equity. You march through your words, raising your voice in classrooms, boardrooms, and online platforms to challenge prejudice and amplify marginalized perspectives. You march through your daily acts of resistance, refusing to accept a world where equality remains an aspiration rather than a reality. The March on Washington was a singular event, but its spirit is eternal, a call to action that lives in every step you take toward justice, every barrier you break, and every dream you refuse to let die. The question of whether your dream has been fulfilled is not one to be answered with finality, but to be lived through action. Each victory, each law passed, each barrier broken, builds on the foundation you laid in 1963. But each injustice that persists reminds you that the work is far from done. The Voting Rights Act, once a crown jewel of your struggle, has been weakened by court decisions and state laws that impose new barriers to the ballot, prompting you to organize and advocate anew. Economic inequality, a central focus of your march, remains a pressing challenge in an era of automation, globalization, and rising costs that disproportionately burden black and low-income communities. Education, envisioned as a great equalizer, too often perpetuates inequity through underfunded schools and biased systems that fail to serve all children equitably. Yet, you draw strength from the resilience of those who came before you, from the marchers who faced fire hoses and police dogs, from the organizers who built coalitions across race, class, and faith. Their courage lives in you, urging you to confront these challenges with the same clarity of purpose, the same unwavering commitment to justice. As you reflect on the March on Washington, you recognize that its legacy is not static but dynamic, shaped by the choices of each generation. It is a legacy of hope, but also of responsibility. A reminder that dreams do not fulfill themselves but require sustained effort, sacrifice, and solidarity. You see this legacy in the young activists who lead today's movements, from the Parkland students fighting for gun reform to the dreamers advocating for immigrant rights, all of whom draw inspiration from your march's vision of collective action. You see it in the global uprisings against oppression, from Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests to Sudan's revolution, where citizens channel your non-violent resistance to demand freedom. You see it in the everyday heroes who teach, vote, organize, and speak out, refusing to let the dream fade. The March on Washington was a moment of extraordinary courage, but its true power lies in its enduring challenge, to make justice not a distant vision, but a lived reality for all. Your dream lives in the steps you take, the voices you raise, and the future you build, one march at a time.